Welcome to our second lesson in our new read aloud series that we're talking about, the ancient Greek civilizations. Today we're going to be moving into another component. Our last read aloud we talked about the jobs of the ancient Greeks. Today we're going to talk about a new component in that. And we're going to be doing it in two parts. This first one's called Mount Olympus, Part 1. Before we start Mount Olympus Part 1, we got to go through our vocab. So let's go through our ancient Greek civilization vocabulary. The first word we learned about yesterday was independent. So remember, as I read the word, you'll repeat it after me. Independent. Anyone remember what independent means? Well, it's kind of like what I'm doing now. I'm here on my own doing these read aloud, so I am working independently, or I'm independent because I'm working on my own. So let's review what we have already learned. What does the word civilization mean? Again, remember, it's a group of people working together in an organized fashion, and there's 5 different components that go through them as well. And yesterday we learned a word called city-state. What is a city-state? Remember, a city-state is an independent city and the surrounding area, it controls, and it's kind of a city that acts like it's its own country. Remember, civilizations have 5 key components. Here are those 5 key components. We have jobs, cities, leaders, religion, contributions. And we're going to be looking at those as we go through the ancient Greeks as well. Remember, the ancient Greeks this is the country of Greece, but the ancient Greeks owned many, many other areas surrounding Greece as well. But I'm just wanting to show you really quick remember where the ancient Greeks were at for most of their lives. So remember, why do we learn about religion? 1, to understand people better. 2, the religion in ancient times often developed as a way to explain how things came to be or how things happen in nature, such as thunder and lightning and tides and oceans. Sometimes they put gods as those, or sometimes they say a god made those. So the reason we learn about this is because we want to understand why the people thought that God thought that way. In the ancient Greek times, they believed that their gods lived on this fabled mountain, or this mountain that actually existed, called Mount Olympus. And they believed that there were 12 gods that lived on Mount Olympus, and they were called the Olympian gods. And Zeus was this god, and he was kind of the leader of these gods. And I know you've heard the name Zeus before, maybe from the movie Hercules or something. Again, so we're going to be walking through their religion. Again, this is something that they believed, and we probably or might not agree with them, but that is okay. We just want to learn more about them. So after today's read aloud, you should be able to recount key details of the ancient Greek religion, also demonstrate an understanding of the word summoned. So I want you to listen to this fictional story to learn more about the gods and goddesses the ancient Greeks believed lived on Mount Olympus. Again, though, this would be a fictional story for us to be listening to. The day began delightfully or happy. Of course, every day began delightfully on Mount Olympus, for it was the home of the gods. Because these gods called Mount Olympus their home, they were called the Olympian gods. Sometimes they enjoyed roaming on earth, which is where the gods could be found at this moment, all except Hermes and Apollo. What do you guys see in this image? Why do you think there are 12 thrones? Hermes, which is fine, that's him right here, messenger of the gods and son of Zeus, appeared in an instant at the side of his brother Apollo. Hermes was wearing his famous winged sandals and winged hat, and he carried a small wooden stick or baton with wings on either side. All of these extra wings gave Hermes even greater speed than he already possessed or had. Because he was constantly flitting here and there, or moving lightly and quickly, carrying news among the gods and leading lost travelers back in the right direction, Hermes needed all the speed he could get. When he was moving his fastest, it always seemed as if, whoosh, he just appeared out of nowhere. Apollo, god of music and poetry, was startled when Hermes suddenly appeared, even though he should have been used to it by now. "Do you have to pop up like that?" he protested, or said with disapproval. "I was just composing the most wonderful song on my heart, and you have made me forget where I was in the melody." If Apollo is composing a song, what is he doing? "So sorry," Hermes exclaimed, although he was secretly pleased, for he was a bit of a trickster. Hermes went on, "But soon you will have more of an audience, for our father Zeus has summoned or called all of us here to the great hall at once." Glancing around nervously, he added quietly, "And you know how he can be when he is kept waiting." Who is Zeus again? That's right, he's the king of the gods and goddesses. Hermes looked at the harp he had given to Apollo long ago, made from the shell of a large tortoise with strings stretched across it. "Still, I can say for a moment, if you would be kind enough to play whatever you are working on." He sat down on a thick cushion on the floor. Apollo smiled, and because he was also the god of light, his smile could truly light up a room. "I would be delighted," he said, and his fingers ran so swiftly or quickly across the harp strings that they seemed almost liquid. As always, the song was so beautiful that anyone listening would think it must be the best song that could ever be played. That is, until Apollo played the next one. Hermes actually sat unmoving, which was quite rare for him, and at the end of the song he sighed. Then he was gone, his parting "thank you" hanging in the air. Apollo thought, "That boy must learn to slow down." Why would it be rare for Hermes to sit still? Well, remember, it's because he is the messenger and always hurrying to deliver the messages. Hermes had already left behind the high clouded mountain, and he was settling down into a lush or thick and healthy green forest below. Here, Hermes was especially alert, for he was searching for the greatest of hunters, or rather, huntresses. His sister, the goddess Artemis. If anything could travel as quickly as Hermes, it would be one of Artemis's arrows, for she was the goddess of hunting, wilderness, and animals. So as you're noticing, all these gods and goddesses kind of have their own little jobs or what they show. So Apollo was the god of music, so his job was music and stuff, and Artemis was the goddess of hunting, the wilderness, and animals. Hermes could hear the crashing and crackling of branches as something large broke through the trees nearby. Suddenly, a great antlered stag, or male deer, burst from the bushes not 5 feet from Hermes, panic in its eyes as it saw him. Why do you think the stag has panic or fear in its eyes? Turning, the stag disappeared from the little clearing as suddenly as it had arrived. Hermes had only enough time to think. How graceful. When two huge hounds leaped from the bushes, ready to follow the stag. Hermes simply held up his wood baton, and the two dogs stopped at once, lying down before him, panting. A moment later, their mistress, Artemis, appeared. Disappointment showed on the goddess's face at losing the deer she had been hunting. At such moments, Artemis could be cruel, but when she saw Hermes, she smiled, for she was very fond of him. I wondered why the hounds had stopped, she said. I'm afraid you will have to stop also, Hermes replied. Our father Zeus has summoned us to come to Mount Olympus as quickly as possible. What does the word summoned mean? At once, Artemis placed the arrow she had been holding into the quiver she wore over her shoulder. I will leave right away, she said, but as Hermes flew off again, he saw her looking longingly or with great desire or want at the bushes where the deer had disappeared. A minute later, the messenger god hovered in the mid-air high above the sea that surrounded Greece, and which held hundreds of islands of all sizes. With eyes as sharp as one of Artemis's arrows, Hermes shot through the ocean waves, weaving among a dozen dancing dolphins. He came to rest next to a massive or very large shoulders of his uncle Poseidon, the god of the seas and of all that crosses the seas. Poseidon's long white beard moved like the sea foam in the water as he turned and spoke. Hermes, you are welcome here, he boomed out in a mighty voice, and Hermes remembered that Poseidon, brother of Zeus, could make the earth shake, for he was also the god of earthquakes. Pointing his trident, which is that thing right there, a three-pointed pitchfork, which he sometimes used to stir up the waves of the sea god said to Hermes, Watch with me. So the two gods watched as the dolphins swam in a smooth, wide figure eight, and massive whales rose up from the depths to swim through the loops of the dolphin's design. When the show was over, 100 octopi jetted or moved quickly in front of the whales and dolphins, shooting black ink from their bellies as a sort of a closing theater curtain to end the performance. Octopi is plural for octopus, so one octopus, many octopi. Poseidon roared with laughter at this surprise ending. Then, turning to Hermes, he asked, What brings you here, nephew? Hermes replied, Zeus asks you to come with all speed to Mount Olympus. I shall go at once, he said, but before he set out to see his brother, Poseidon took the time to thank the dolphins, whales, and octopi for their performance. When he finished, Hermes was already gone. It is wonderful how he does that, Poseidon thought. In the sky high above him, Hermes was already seeking out another of the gods. Suddenly, a lightning bolt split the air only 10 feet from the messenger god. Who do you think is the god of lightning? Yep, that would be Zeus. This was followed by a deafening crash of thunder. Zeus was getting impatient. Hermes called upward, I am moving as quickly as I can, my lord. The messenger of gods hurried on his way. We're going to hear the rest of the read aloud next time we go through this. So in our comprehension questions today, let's go through what we've learned about so far about these Olympian gods. Where did the ancient Greeks believe the gods lived, or these really important gods lived? So we heard about some different gods and goddesses. Which god was the messenger of all the other gods? What was Apollo, the first god we met with? Who was he the god of? What about Artemis? What was she the goddess of? Who was the god of the sea and could create earthquakes? And who was the king of the gods? How might some of the powers of the gods and goddesses explain how things happen in nature? So our word for today was the word summoned. Say that word with me. Summoned. So are both of the vowels sounds the same in this word? Summoned. Wait a second. They are, even though they're spelled differently. What sound is the ED making at the end of this word? Can ED make any other sounds? So summoned is making a D sound. ED can also make a T and a ED sound. What do you think summoned means? Summoned means you are called forth or requested to come to a specific place. Now, this isn't a picture of my childhood bedroom, but this bedroom's kind of messy. So a lot of the times when I was in second grade, my mom summoned me to the bed, to my bedroom to clean it up. So I was called to the bedroom. The principal summoned all of the students to the auditorium for a special announcement. Have you ever been summoned? Have you ever summoned someone or been summoned by someone to a place? So we're going to go to our Greek civilization chart. Remember, we're going to be talking about all these different components for the Greek civilizations. What component did we hear about in today's Read Aloud? That's right, we heard about religion. So what we heard about for the religion was just where the gods, they believed their gods lived, and they lived in a place in Mount Olympus. So now we added another thing to our chart, and that would be under religion, we're going to be putting Mount Olympus. So you're going to use, we're going to go back to our Greek civilization notebook, and I want you to write a sentence about where the gods lived and how many lived there. So again, we learned about the gods lived on Mount Olympus, and we said that there were 12 of those Olympian gods. So I want you to write a sentence about where the gods lived and how many lived there. Thank you for our second read aloud. We will be continuing learning about our next time on part 2 and learning about more of the gods and goddesses in the ancient Greek civilizations.